Hey, welcome. It is your boy, Coach G, after a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. But I can't even start the show, Misfits Managed today, without my partner. Lauren, where you at, sis?
I'm here. Hey, Coach G.
What's up? What's up, girl? How you doing?
I am doing good. It
Yeah.
has it was a good weekend, got some water and sunshine, and now I'm getting ready to go get more.
Oh, I'm hating on that, boy. I'm hating on that. Because I'm in the stage play, so we kind of sign contracts that we can't, really we do a lot of weekend work. So uh, definitely on Sundays, but now it looks like we're going to be adding Saturdays probably coming up. So trying to free up my Saturdays too. So until the end of July, I can't really go anywhere. So I'm so envious of you.
No water for you.
Yeah. So you be thinking about your brother. Get an extra dip for me.
You can live vicariously, don't worry.
Oh, I am. Just take a lot of pictures, video or something. Point. Coach G. Coach G.
I'll just tag you and everything. Coach G's here.
Yeah. Your boys will be like, Coach G, mom, who's Coach G? I
Oh,
don't see him.
they know your picture whenever you go like something on social media. They're like, it's Gary. I think it's hilarious.
They're my
Um,
buddies already, and I don't even know them yet.
yeah, bud. All right. Well, I'm excited about tonight because this very much, I think it's hilarious. This stemmed off of last week, and
Yeah,
we didn't know it
overflow.
was going to happen. But we are talking tonight. Let's see if I can sum this up shortly
Right.
about um, all the little tiny purposes that come in each season of life instead of somebody having just one big grandiose purpose because that gets overwhelming.
Most deaf. Most deaf.
Um, I last week when we were talking with Jean, I think it's hilarious because we always talk about how much different little things we do and all of our lovely jewels of the journey
Come on now.
and
You pulling from the past.
pull it always everything we talk about seems to just come back and be relevant. So we're
Just
doing it.
tying it all, sewing it all together. That's how we roll.
Absolutely. Um yeah, I we always talk about all the little tiny things and you're in having a ball with theater now and I think a little bit of the writing still, if that's still in your works.
That's
And
in the works. Little drawing. So
oh, I
little
didn't think
little saxophone action. So
I didn't know you played saxophone.
just a little bit. I'm trying to get back into that. So
All right.
it's all about feeding your soul. Remember, we've been
Oh, of
talking about that.
course.
You know,
Of course. Well, I think that leads perfectly into the theme of the night. You want to
which
dig into
is
it? I don't know. What is it?
I don't know what the theme is. It was just such a good conversation. I don't know what we would.
Well, so it's kind of a probably will be a really long title, let's be honest.
Right.
But um we just always have as people and it's such a trendy thing right now to have this big old, you know, large overall purpose and that gets really intimidating and I think a lot of people go into analysis paralysis with that because it's like
Come on.
what's my purpose supposed to be when break it down.
Well, so for me in our discussion, and I have to shout out our sister and our brother, Izzy, the intentional healer, Camacho
Yep.
Black, and my brother James Love, who run AYPN, Activate Your Power Now, which we're both speakers on.
Yep.
And then we have an upcoming event, I believe, in June coming up for them. So, um, but they talk about the seasons. And I'm on their leadership team, and as we were, even as part of their leadership team, and we're building these different seasons, it just still didn't click with me until our conversation last week post show. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks, and how we need to break up the vision into segments or seasons. Um, I fully understand the summer and the winter and the fall, the spring. And like, obviously just like the seasons, we're entering, we're moving from spring into summer. This has been like the spring is like new birth,
Mm-hmm.
represents new birth and, new life, whatever you want to call that. So
Yeah.
for me, it has been what you just said, new, exciting things. I pray every day, Lord, for other people, Lord, stir up the gifts inside of me, or stir up the gifts inside of them and let them come to the forefront. Well, I feel like the Lord flipped that back on me, because of being in a place of release. I've let go of so much and released so much trauma and pain and hurt and negativity. I learned even with release, sometimes it's good to let go of
Mm-hmm.
some good things just to make space for some new things. So in that process of releasing, I found new loves. The renewed love of the saxophone, renewed love of drawing, an ancient love of acting. And I'm in that, and I'm just have fallen in love with it all over again. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's just been amazing.
And wait a second. Did you say when did you used to play saxophone?
When I was probably early 20s. I
Okay.
just, loved music, and I wasn't the musical person in the family, even though our entire family is gifted musically. I was the big athlete, football player, basketball player, track star, all these different things. And athletics wise, I was like, you know what? And I even sang in the choir, but I was like, I want to play the saxophone. Such a beautiful instrument. My mom agreed, went and bought me one. And I sat in the band at church and just learned by ear and started playing. I wasn't great, you know, but I loved it. And just remembering, it came to my remembrance as I had some release things come up. And I was like, you know what? I need to do that again. And I
I
just
like
love it. I love it.
Well, I was just going to ask y'all something about seasons really quickly. First off, I got to tease you because when I was in school and everything, and when we talk about being a misfit and all along those lines, we know that there is a stereotype that brothers, no matter what their complexion are supposed to be the masters at instrument. And I just remember that when I was in, I think it was high school or maybe junior high, going to join the band, and I tried to pick up the drums, and I think the band director was basically like, "Mark, I don't know what happened with we were giving out rhythm and everything, but you did not get any of that rhythm, so
You
you
didn't
do
get the
not
gene.
be a member of the band and all along those lines." And even in the choir, because I was in the school choir and everything, and I'd be lying if I told you to find folks that I wasn't doing a lot of lip syncing, because I did know how to hum and do some lip syncing and all along those lines. So I did manage to stay in the choir for I think about a year or two. The band, I was pretty much out of that and everything. But I had, as I told, I think Lauren and you beforehand, that I had spent some time with mom, and y'all were talking about seasons, and mom just
Hmm.
turned 82 and all along those lines. And mom made it very clear to us, because she was like, because she's still very vibrant, still gets around, and all along those lines, she was wearing that she was aging to some degree, as we all do, and maybe had a little bit more gray hair. And even as she puts it, her body might not recover from an ache or all along those lines the way that it used to. But she also made it very clear that she ain't planning to go nowhere, because mom at one time was like, I plan to be here till I'm like around 100 or something along those lines. So she's already declared that she plans to be here for a while. Like I said, only the good Lord above will be able to dictate that answer. But as far as
Right, right.
she planned to be here for a while, and she was letting both me, my younger brother, as well as my uh, nephews, her grandkids, know that she plans to be here and to see them grow into whatever they may grow into as well, in terms of careers and life and all along those lines, and maybe even their spouses and all.
She just speaking it into
Letting
existence.
us know that she plans to still be here. So I didn't know y'all's thoughts around this notion that sometimes when people get to a winter season or something like that, that there are some folks that are afraid that they are on the last leg, if I can use the race analogy, and all in that space. I'm always pleased when I see people that are having a vibrant goal and that they plan to be here for a while. And that's what I noticed from her, as well as my aunt, who will turn 80 in November, and my dad will
Mhm.
turn 84 in June. But all of them seem like they are trying to be here for a minute.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
You know, the one thing I would say is from seeing lots of different people from all walks of life, all everything, age, and it is, in my opinion, such a mindset
Hmm.
Exactly.
Exactly.
because you can, if you are just living life, loving it, and like, no, I'm sticking around. Now, granted, things happen. I will throw that out there because they do. But there are so many people that you would never guess their age or how old they are because, well, A, they don't act like it, but
Right.
they're just like, no, I got things to do. And then other people have just kind of lost their love for life and um one way or another. I know it's different when you're talking about illnesses or whatever else, but I've seen people just, move on to the next season, stage of life, and it really seems like they just kind of give up because they're like, that's what I love to do, and if I can't do that anymore, then what the heck am I here for? And they all, I don't know, they
Yeah,
almost
That's
gotta
that's so good. That's
go
so
back
good.
in their shell.
yeah, you got a good point there. And sometimes some of those injuries can also impact what you do. Because one of the other
Yep.
stories that came up during this weekend and this time with mom was with my aunt who lives here in the same town that I do, Durham, North Carolina, and everything. Was talking about her daughter who is had, I think it was him, hip replacement surgery, and has definitely been on a very serious weight loss journey. And I can tell you that she just recently came from a wedding. One of the family members on her side of the family and everything, or like her dad's side of the family, I should say, which is not on my mom and aunt side of the family. But she definitely looks a lot leaner, and you can tell that she's done a lot of exercise. And now she's even gotten into her dad's game because her dad, who has passed away, my uncle and everything, was an avid golfer. And while Tanya has always been into sports like basketball and things like that, I have never ever known her to pick up a golf club ever in her life, but apparently this is a new hobby that she's gotten
Right.
into, and it's even a new hobby that she is really enjoying. And even one of the things that my aunt gave her was that at one time she gave two of my uncles different watches. One of the watches, because one uncle was into fishing, was the second hand, was like the fishing rod. So that was the kind of the second
Yep.
hand because he was into fishing. And for the one that was her father, it was the golf club. And so my aunt gave her that watch since she seemed to be very serious about developing this game of golf. And like I said, she was on a serious weight loss journey. And I can tell you the pictures I saw, you would think that she was as young as her daughters, and her daughters are in their late 20s or maybe somewhere around that nature. But yeah, Tanya is definitely slimmed down quite actively. And I'm sure that her husband is quite pleased to see that and everything. She's very much been married for a long time, but she went on that journey and was it was a goal that she set for herself, and it looks like she has had a victory in that goal.
Well, for me, kind of my to you both of your points, I think of two quick stories. One is biblical that I think is actually kind of funny. When, at the end of the reign and life of King David, and we know how active he was and how much he loved women. And he's the Bible talks about it, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. He's laying in his bed close to death, and they're wondering when is the hour that the great king is going to pass. And they go in, I think, I don't know, whoever goes in to check on him and realizes maybe this is the hour the king is dead. And everybody's like, oh no, he's not dead because he's this great warrior king. But then one of them says, go grab a young virgin and throw her in the bed with him. And when the king didn't jump on the young virgin, they realized the king is dead. So that was the end of a season for him. But the other one is my mother. Um, this is a woman who survived the most massive brain aneurysm you could imagine. when they showed me the MRIs and stuff of the back of her head and the blood pool that was there, supposed to have been an 8-hour surgery that turned out to be like 45 minutes, because God, being God, knowing all things, left a bow in the back of her brain. And what I mean by a bow, the surgeon came out, and I'm like thinking my mom is dead. It died on the table because it was such a delicate operation. He said, we found a bow of blood vessels that were kind of like tied in a knot. So he basically untied the blood vessels, snipped and clipped, and reconnected on both sides to now allow blood flow. 45-minute
Wow.
surgery. It was supposed to be 8, 9 hours. Um, so she had to relearn everything: walking, talking, eating, feeding herself. I mean, literally everything that we take for granted. And you talking about the ultimate warrior, and watching her rebuild herself every day. It was powerful for a young man to watch. And this is the woman that is my heart. Um, but that being said, after dad passed, that zeal for life that you just mentioned, Lauren, you could see that twinkle in her eye was gone. And she no longer wanted to do the rehab. She no longer wanted to eat clean and healthy. She wanted the normal foods that, I'm sneaking in fish, catfish, and yams and sweet potato and, all this kind of stuff to her, because I didn't have the heart to tell her no. If that's what she wanted, I went and got it. So, um, yes, I mean, we hold on to seasons, but there's a time and a place. I mean, the Bible talks about that. There's a season for all things, and there is a season to die, and we're all going to face that. So,
Yeah,
uh,
but coach, in that same line, and I hate to be a downer and all along those lines, but how do you deal with it when sometimes you are shocked and all along those lines? I talked about the positive things that were going on with mom and my cousin and everything, but I also remember not that long ago, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now I have recently learned that the person may have even taken themselves out and everything. But there was a young professor over at one of our HBCUs and everything, and it was just kind of like suddenly that he passed away and everything, and everybody was already shocked. And there have been a couple of shocking deaths in that area, some that were accidental, like a car accident, or some other things that have happened and everything. But there are rumors, and I'm not saying that they are true rumors because I don't know, and I'd be lying if I said that I knew, and everything, that he may have taken himself out and all along those lines. So how do we deal with the seasons when sometimes the seasons seem to be interrupted and self-interrupted and all along those lines?
abrupt, right? I mean, I didn't expect her to go, but I think my answer, Lauren probably already knows, is I fall back on faith. I don't know all things, but I trust a higher power, which is, in my view, is God, that does know all things, that knows the end from the beginning. And while I was caught off guard, as you're talking about, in the scenarios, and broken and devastated, God wasn't caught off guard by that. There was a mark on his calendar for March 8th that was her day. And when that day came, she left. And to God, there was no surprise. He just moved forward in the order that he had. It was the end of her season.
Mhm.
So, what helped me heal was just realizing her time here on earth had expired. And I can be selfish and want more and more and more, but I surrender and submit myself to a higher call, higher being, and I accepted his calendar.
And Lauren, along those same lines, I know that sometimes it's uh, when these things happen, sometimes it happens in such a way that even to what Coach is saying, because I did have a friend that lived many years and everything after she had had a aneurysm as well. Ironically, the aneurysm was at a Sweet Honey in the Rocks concert. But I want to say Jocelyn, which is her birth name, a lot of people knew her as Makeda, lived for about I want to say close to 10 years, if not longer than that, and everything after that aneurysm. So she actually survived
Mhm.
for a long time, probably beyond what was expected. I had another friend that passed not that long ago, and she had been declared terminal, but she actually wound up living probably 3 years past the terminal diagnosis. Because I want to say that they said she had a year to live, and I want to say she went another 3 or 4 years past what had been diagnosed and everything. So I just wanted your take when you hear people that are having that will to live and maybe even surprise us by how much longer they live than we're expecting them to live.
I'd say enjoy it.
Right.
We don't know how much time we have with anybody,
Right.
and I don't know. We tend to not enjoy it, and then all of a sudden we miss it, and we wish we had it back when it's gone. And the world today honestly really sucks at living in the moment. We're all
Right.
about how can we, what's our next move? And I am very guilty of that. I'm a planner, and I'm like, all right, how do I get to where I'm going next? And I am very much trying to be a enjoy the journey kind of person, and live in the moment. This season has very much tested me in that of learning to live in the moment, be with myself, be there with my family, because they're not going to be there forever. And my kids are only going to be so small forever. You're only going to get so much time with insert person here. So, you love them where they're at. You help give them the strength to fight where they're at, respect the decision if they, whatever it is they choose. And if they make it past that, go enjoy it. Go do the things that you like to do. Go do the things that they like
Right.
to do.
Sis, I'm just sitting here beaming as your bro because you are walking what you're talking, and you've learned and mastered the jewels of the journey. And to acquire those jewels and nuggets that are lined up on the road, on the journey that we're in the season, because there's different jewels in this in different seasons that are
Yep.
available to us to pick up along the journey. But you said the key word there is pausing,
Mhm.
taking the time to pause and be present in the moment. So now it doesn't just look like a rock. You realize, oh my God, that's a diamond over here on my right. Oh my God, that's a ruby over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is it
good.
sometimes the pause also reflecting? Because, like I said, part of what happened as we were at mom's house was we were reflecting on people that had passed and everything. You heard me talking about both of my uncles, and we were even remembering which chairs they might have been sitting in if they had been there at that house. But we were also remembering, like, I have one great uncle that was missing some limbs. I can't remember whether he was a double amputee or a single amputee, but one of the conversations that mom was remembering was how, despite the fact that folks didn't even know how he was managing to drive a stick shift, but he somehow managed to drive it, despite the fact that he was didn't have all the arms and things that you would think would be able to be done. But that's one of the things that they were admiring was his ability. And now I was also remembering, because she was at the top of the hill, I think it was a great grandmother that lived to be like around 94, because I was trying to remember how old she lived to be, and I think it was to 94. And yeah, she was this would have been when I was a teenager, so it was like you enjoyed seeing her, but she also had that kind of old spirit that teenagers don't always enjoy and everything along those lines. So I enjoyed seeing her, but also might have been spooked to some degree. But as a teenager, seeing her and all along those lines. And before you came here, Coach G, I was teasing Lauren because I was saying that I saw my nephews, and they are definitely very tall. The younger one is actually taller than the older one. So I think I overheard him saying that he was his um bigger little brother or something like that. But he was basically implying that he knew he was taller, even though he was the younger one, and all along those lines. And as I was telling Lauren, they've got some new hairstyle that I don't understand, even though I used to have a big afro as well and everything. And I was saying that to Lauren before you got here, that I'm trying to figure out where that little shrieking pill is, because I remember when they were shorter than me, and I want to get them back to where I remember, even though I know that that's not possible. If anything, they'll probably wind up being like, he'll probably catch up with his younger brother, and they'll probably both be like 6'6" or 6'8", and they do play sports, because I know one of them is, well, they're both into soccer as well as flag football at one point, and who knows what other sports they'll get into as well. But I'm sitting there going like, wait a minute, I remember when y'all were short. I need y'all to be short again.
Right. Hey, we got to throw out love to Liberty Twitcher. To everything there is a season. Man, I love that. To everything there is a season. Thank you, Liberty Twitcher, for that powerful comment. And so correct. And that just kind of feeds into what we've been talking about tonight. And I think, Lauren, back to our original points, I think there's so much power in breaking the long-term goal up into sections, or as we've talked about tonight, seasons, because there's so many, if like for winter, I would say is what, the dying of things, or
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of the right word.
Well, it's it is a season of reflection because, well, for people like me, I hate cold. So you stay in and you reflect, but it's also all use trees. The leaves freeze, they fall off, and come spring, new leaves sprout. A lot of times you cut your vegetation back so it doesn't get all scraggly. I think, I don't know. That's about the extent of my gardening expertise. But I mean, but yeah, trees lose their leaves when it gets too cold, and it is time for regrowth.
What I hear you saying, winter for you, and really it's same for me. You know this. Winter is a season of release.
Yeah.
And now that, after James and Izzy taught those lessons on the four seasons, now I can reflect back and see, I'm thinking about how I was November, December, January of, coming into from 23 into 24, and I was releasing. I'm like, why am I sad? And I mean, it's the holiday season. My life is totally different than what used to be.
Yeah.
So obviously that was one reason, but I was releasing all the toxicity of all of that. So entering into the spring, I was a different person. And I'm excited about um, the next year. I guess, I don't know, would that be the fall now? Or would it be summer, or maybe it's spring? I don't know. But I'm excited about the next go around on how I'm going to be. I'm lost.
Like I said, based on what I know of your age, I think it would probably be either summer or fall, and all along those lines, because winter is usually seen as like the ending of the life journey and everything. But one of the things that I hear people talk about, and maybe this will get us back on track and everything, is this notion, and I don't know whether Lauren agrees with it, but you kind of applied it even in our earlier conversation and everything, because I know sometimes people are thinking that once they hit a certain season, that it's that notion of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Because even at my age, and I'm 62, so I'm probably getting ready to hit more of that fall than the winter season, and all along those lines. But I'll have people even in my life, and since you already went there one time, I'll go there as well, and they'll be like, Mark, there's no way in hell, excuse my language and everything, that you're ever going to get into a relationship because you're kind of set in your ways and all along those lines. And I'm going like, no, love may have come around, and there might be somebody that can put up with my ways and all along those lines. So I don't know that I necessarily buy that, but you do have some people that are of the opinion that the older you get, the more set in your ways you are, and therefore you will never find, quote unquote, a true love.
Spit it out, Lauren.
I'd like to throw that right out the window.
Please.
Yes.
I this very well may get some lashback, or it might be an unpopular opinion. Here we go. I think that is for very closed-minded people. It is for people who don't want to try anymore and are not open to hear what's next because it's called the comfort zone, if you've heard of that.
Yes.
And we get real comfortable in our comfort zone, and maybe we enjoy it. But you know what's funny? Life has a real nice way of kicking our ass out of the comfort zone and saying, I don't care if you like it. And you know, one of the things I've learned is even when it kicks you out of something good, it's kicking you to usually something better.
Right.
And it's real hard to get your head wrapped around that. 'Cause you're like, no, I don't want to leave. I like this. I like this season. But kind of like Coach was saying earlier, it's not always bad things that you have to release. It's not always things that you're ready, that you think you're ready to release. I went through that not long ago, and I had all the good things on my plate, loved everything I was doing. And I just found myself doing everything horrible. I loved everything that I was doing, but I had too much on my plate, so I wasn't doing any of it good, including being there for my family. And it's always a 3-time thing with me. Why, I don't know. I apparently like to argue, and I'm apparently stubborn. That's another conversation. But it took, God, 3 times to say, Lauren, it is time to shove everything off your plate, and we're going to rebuild. We're going to redo this. And I will never forget one morning, you know, I sat there and I said, okay, what's my verse this morning? Where do you want me to go? And it terrified me because I don't honestly remember who it was anymore, what book. Coach, you may be able to pull this out of thin air, but I opened and it was talking about some men doing business in the sacred space. And, you know, Jesus walks in and he says, burn the whole thing down. This is not where.
Overturning the tables in the temple.
Yeah. I knew you were going to get that one. And it said, burn everything down and I will rebuild in 3 days. And all of a sudden I was just like, everything that you have put on my plate, you now want me to burn down? What? And I got real pissed. I got really mad. And I was just like, no, you have put all the stuff on my plate. I am not burning it down. I have worked too hard for all of this.
Right.
And then went to service, like, it was either that same week or the next week. I don't remember. And the sermon was all about sacrifice. And it was talking about sacrificing, in that it was who? Isaac, biblically, sacrificing Isaac.
Mhm.
And then in that moment, I got the strong feeling of, Lauren, this is meaning all of the things that you are doing. You need to sacrifice. I have given it to you once. I will bring it back how I want to bring it back. And I was like, crap. Fine. So for the next week, I started sending some texts. I started making some phone calls, shoved everything off my plate, my old podcast, all the groups I was a part of, all the speaking things I was doing.
I remember that.
I was pissed. I was very much a grieving. But
Winter.
it was winter. It was time for me to slow down. It was time for me to reevaluate where my priorities were. And it was time for me to trust God that he was going to bring whatever back that needed to be brought back. And it was a heck of a season. It hurt. honestly, I kind of felt like I was losing. I was having to give up a piece of myself because it was. But I did it. Cleared my schedule and said, okay, you let me know when it is time to pick back up. And in that time, spent time with my kids and I healed a lot of relationships.
I think you healed a lot of inner self too.
Yep.
I think both of our winters this past year were intense and powerful because there was so much reflection, there was so much release, there was so much um I guess you would even say in a wintertime, but there was revelation,
Oh, yeah.
revelation of self as things released. And now we enter spring. And I think our springs are similar again, too, because we just have this new birth in so many different areas of our life. Would maybe even say every area of our lives. There's new birth, there's tremendous growth into all of that. And this is, I guess I'm kind of catching up to what I was trying to say earlier. It's starting to make sense to me now. It just came too fast. But so that's why I'm excited for the next season of summer, because summer represents things in full bloom. So
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking about this delayed and extended winter that we just came out of, where there was great loss, there was great sacrifice, reflection, sadness, you just, release of good and bad
Mm-hmm.
it created space. And then it brought us into our spring of new birth, where now we had space and capacity to accept new things, new thoughts, new ideologies, new activities,
Yep.
um, just new everything, new love languages, new hobbies, new skills that we didn't know we had that were dormant. But I think what's powerful, as I just said, is I think we're still going to have an extended spring because I feel like there's so much newness that He wants to pour and invest in us.
Yep.
Um, that when we get to our season of summer, again, for me, summer represents things in full bloom, or a matured Coach G, a matured Lauren, a matured Mark. That is going to be powerful. So, I mean, as I sit here and think about this, thank you, Lord, for letting me formulate my thoughts. Um, that's going to be powerful. That's going to be powerful.
Well, and you know what's funny? You're going to love this. Um, as you sit there and talk about blooming flowers, um, a few months ago, I do not sit in meditation very long, usually ever, because um, my brain drifts too much. It has to be a moving meditation for me. It has
Okay.
to be something where, honestly, I'm like probably doing busy work.
We are so similar. It just blows my mind. For me, it's called prayer walking.
Yeah, there you go.
It's hard for me to sit and pray. I
Yeah,
walk.
yeah. Um, so I have to be doing something, and that is when I'm like organizing or like, okay, all right, talk to me. Um, so one of the few times that I have sat down and have been still, I put my hands out and said, okay, what do you got for me? And I, it's very weird because some people talk about getting visions. I don't actually like see something. It's more of he's telling me what's happening. And my vision, what vision, whatever, however you want to describe that, I
Right.
don't know,
I got you.
was my hand was out there. My favorite flower is a Gerber daisy. I'm not
Mm.
a flower person, but my favorite flower is a Gerber daisy. It was a handful of spread wide open daisies and a microphone, and the the verse, the line drop was, "Here's your opportunities, take them."
Yes.
A handful of flowers and a microphone. And I'm like, okay. And so every time something comes at me, that comes back at me, and it's a handful of flowers and me saying, okay. So
Seizing the moment.
going right along with your blooming flowers thing.
Yeah,
I
well,
like that.
there you go. That flowers. That was a nice little twist and everything. I did have a question for y'all that was crossing my mind. You know, I've always got tons of questions. And when you're evaluating the seasons, can there such a thing as evaluation sabotage? And I guess I'll toss it to you, Lauren, but I'm sure you may have some thoughts around this, Coach, as well, because I do know sometimes people are trying to assess what's going on in their season, whether it's winter, fall, spring,
Oh,
or
yeah.
summer, or whatever, and they will think of things that are the reasons that they don't need to advance and everything. And sometimes they are very real and everything along those lines. Like I said, I know that my younger brother and my only brother has been engaged for a number of years, and they've had some health issues, both of them. She has a new heart, and she's dealing with a terminal illness and everything. So sometimes I think that they may be putting off the wedding because they don't want it to jump into that situation and then have to end it abruptly or something along those lines. So they may be overly evaluating versus diving head
Yeah.
into the relationship. But that's just my thoughts around this, and I could be totally wrong. But I just wanted your thoughts around evaluation sabotage sometimes as well.
Oh, I love that subject. And I'm a prime candidate for that sometimes because I love to overanalyze and over dissect things every once in a while. I I love the honestly psychology of people and why they do things. Love it.
Mm.
I have found that out about myself in the past couple of years. But I also think that so many people are waiting for the time to be right. They're gonna do this after this. They're gonna do it after this, and that's not how it works. Um, you can plan for the perfect time, and then let's talk about how many things the world's going to throw at you to screw up your perfect time and make it not perfect for whatever reason. And I think you have to learn to say, okay, what's either holding us back as to why we won't move forward, because a lot of times we hold on to the reasons why we don't want to do something because there's something moving forward that we don't want to do, whether it be committing to something, whether it be fear of something that's going to happen, whether it be not wanting to let go of where you are for whatever reason. I think we overanalyze a lot of things and say, here's all the reasons that um, I don't want to do X, Y, or Z. And I think, honestly, from my personal experience, that has very much been from a place of fear.
Mm. See,
Coach?
for me, on the journey of one of the greatest things I've learned on the journey of a warrior is one of the things I just said is seizing the moment.
Yep.
So in the scenario that Mark just talked about, especially as the man, and it's not trying to be chauvinistic or nothing, but I'm just under the hierarchy of God. The man is the head. I'm seizing the moment. If this is the woman that I proposed to and pledging to spend my life with, I want every second with her as her husband. Lauren, you just answered the question about why we don't move forward in situations because we're afraid, fear,
Mm-hmm.
which false evidence appearing real.
Yep.
Where I feel like your love and your passion should override or conquer those fears. Not saying that fear, you're absent of the fear, but your love and your passion helps you to overcome the fear.
Yeah.
Um, again, like one of the things I learned in my marriage, that things that I should have did or said in key moments, that if I could jump in a time capsule and go back, I would now, because I get it now. There's a value that's been added in my life to seizing moments and not wasting time. Because as you're talking, it reminds me of a song we were just talking about when I was a kid in the choir at church, and I sang it with my best friend. He passed a couple years ago with COVID, um, called "Tomorrow." And to sum up the song, I know Mark, you probably know the song, and he's basically saying, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this and that." And basically, one of the main things is that I'm going to surrender my life and give my life to God. He knows that all the answers to all the questions and his problems and situations is him surrendering and giving himself to the Lord. But he's always saying, "Tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow." But the end of the song, we realize that of all the great things that God promises us in his word, thousands and thousands, and then there's things he promises outside of the Bible that are spoken word things, prophetic words that are spoken over us. But the one thing he does not ever promise us is tomorrow.
He
And the
doesn't
song
promise.
ends, "You better choose the Lord today, for tomorrow very well might be too late."
But both of you, isn't that part of the problem that exists in society? Because I've said on this show and I've said on other shows, I know my bad habits, just like I know the bad habits of some of my family members and friends as well. And I know that one of mine is that I am a notorious procrastinator and I'm a notorious listener of that inner critic. So I know that there have been relationships that I have not gone for, and then later you find out that they are with another person and you never even approach them, and the same with jobs as well. So I know that there have been opportunities where I have literally sat there and had that whole tomorrow conversation, that whole conversation, and then by the time you get the guts or the nerves to go approach either the job or the person or whatever you're trying to pursue, it's already walked out the door.
Right. So, do people really have to decide, do you want to live a life of fear? Because if you do, you're going to also live a life of regret.
Right.
And I think the most powerful, the most creative, most ingenious people, you know where they all collectively are? In the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
And the primary reason that we don't know the most powerful invention, or the next greatest Van Gogh, or the next great musician, the next president, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
is because they allowed fear to stop them. And those that we were talking about early, maybe you have a car accident or you have a stroke or whatever, and you're debilitated now and you can't physically function in the way that you used to. Now you get to live a life of regret, and nothing weighs heavier than regret.
I would second that, because one of the things that I talk about a lot is, and honestly, this pushes me whenever I'm in that spot of, like, am I going to let fear stop me today? Is when it comes to the end, am I going to lay on my bed and say, I wish I would have done these things, it's not so scary now that I look back? Or
Right.
am I going to lay there and say, nope, did everything, I attempted everything, because you miss 100% of the opportunities that you didn't take.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say all of them are right, but you can look into them, you can entertain them and choose if they're right for you, which it kind of wraps all of this up quite perfectly as to kind of what we were saying is, so we've talked a lot tonight about things that are right for us, things that have kind of come back, and I think it defines that perfectly as sometimes the things you're meant to do are different in each season.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think you're here for one grandiose purpose, it it gets overwhelming and you're just like, well, what the heck is that? Like, you almost get terrified because you got to find your purpose. You got to figure it out. And it's just like this big, overwhelming thing when in all reality, it's different in every single season. And, uh, you're there to help somebody in some season. You're also there to learn something in another season. And you break it down. But as long as you are staying aligned to your values, who you are, that core of what makes you you, and you stay aligned to that, you'll figure out that purpose for the next season, and it'll probably come smack you in the face and you'll be like, oh,
Right.
okay. But then it's time for action, because half the time, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, it means growth, it means work, it means, how the hell do I do this when you have absolutely no idea?
Right.
And sometimes the purpose can be very simple, because one of the things I've been saying lately, not so much on Misfits Managed, but definitely on some of my other shows and everything, where I have a multitude of guests come in and talk. And one of the things that I do on all the shows at the end, because it just occurred to me sometime recently that it was one of my purposes, is that there is so much negativity in the world and in the society. So literally every show that I do that is one that I produce or that I am the host of, I get my guests to give a message of positivity. And like I said, it might only be one person that gets that message of positivity and it resonates with them. But to me, that is a form, and I'm not trying to knock what you do, Coach, because you are an ordained minister, but to me, it's a form of a ministry, because I don't think every minister is necessarily a minister in the sense of actually being a church minister. I
Right.
think you
Right.
can have a ministry even in terms of like spreading not even the gospel, but a message of positivity. So to me, that
Right.
is almost a
Absolutely.
form of ministry, just to get people to think about that thought. So even if it's like 100, I don't know how many people I've sent that question to. Let's say it's 100 or 1,000. If that is resonating, if one person hears that message, and then that message is put out in the universe, and it kind of changes this negative dichotomy that we have right now, that to me is a victory. And I think God would say the same thing as well. So that to me is almost like a form of a ministry, even if it's not a quote unquote church ministry.
Mark, you're preaching misfit.
Right.
See what I did there? Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you're tying everything together.
Well, y'all did it beautifully for me, and then I was just like, all right, here we go.
Yeah. It's just that's just good stuff. What he's also talking about is being the exception.
Yeah.
Daring to be different and stepping outside of the norms and not fitting in the boxes that society pushes on us. Um, that's so empowering. Now, granted, in the beginning of that process, you might be alone.
Mhm.
Might be alone, and you have to be okay with self. But I think, like in that, like Lauren, in our winter season, that's what I feel like both of us. That's what was fortified in us,
Yeah.
self. And I know you're married and you have children and all that, but still, so many things were pulled away from you that you felt alone. So you've learned to go ahead,
Yeah.
spit that out because I know this is good.
No, it, so, I mean, it's kind of the Mother's Day episode we were talking
Yeah.
about is, yes, I am married with 2 kids, but that's not all that I am. That's a lot of who I am, but it's not all that I am. And honestly, I don't think that's a very common, I don't even know what you would call that for a woman, mom, all the things. But keep going.
I'm lost in my thought now.
Squirrel.
No, but you're right, because a lot of times people are stereotyping and all along those lines, and sometimes it can be even interesting because one of the things that I think that is an important part of even what we're talking about today, and even what Misfit seems to be about as well, is this notion of understanding your seasons, but also understanding communications. I'm just going to share a story that will be very brief. But my brother was teasing me. I was actually calling to one of my good friends, and I was talking to him. So I was going to. He was going to pick me up at the cultural center where y'all normally would see me producing this show and everything. But I had not sure we were going to mom's house, so I was going and catching the bus, and a friend gave me a ride, and then Malik called me, and he was like, to have him drop you off at the Sheets and everything. So I was talking to my buddy Ray, and as I got in the phone, he was on the phone, and he was teasing me. He was going like, well, no, he does not understand phone etiquette because he's trying to talk on the phone while I'm on the phone at the same time and everything. So we were having that brotherly teasing moment at the moment because he was giving me that ribbon. He was like, wait a minute, why are you trying to have a phone conversation while I'm on the phone? That is not phone etiquette and everything. So it was kind of like he was ribbing me for my lack of phone etiquette. And I was like, hey, I can get it. I can take the tease.
Right. No, it just, I think the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do here at Misfits Manage is kind of what you talked about, Mark, speaking to your point earlier. But ultimately is to be the exception, is to step outside the closet, step outside the box, step away from the groups, and be you. Be unapologetically who you are and do the things that you love, that you beat to your own drum, that you do the things that you like, you create your own values, you do what's important to you. And I think when a person operates in that capacity, their cup is always at a level of full. And I just imagine, which is exciting for me now, I think about as I reflected this past winter on all the different things that I've done. And I had some good friends that, Lauren, my sis, and others that reminded me of, she knew some of the current things. Some of the other people knew some of the older things. You coached this. Do you remember that championship game? And do you remember this state championship game? Do you remember this? And just different situations that we kind of discount and throw out because we let life beat us down. So I reflected on all of that, realizing that it all, as Lauren just said, it all ties together. That I've had all these different years and all these different seasons of my life, even the bad, along with the good, because you got to have both. It's unbalanced to have one more than the other. But it all ties together to make me the exception, Coach G, that I am today. It is what strengthened me and fortified me to have the confidence, the strength, the courage, the wisdom to step outside the box and be me.
Got to be forged by fire, don't you?
Come on, girl.
Forward by fire. Just really quickly, I know we're winding down and everything along those lines.
Nice.
But sometimes it's also, we can go a few minutes over, but sometimes it's also understanding what is needed to be done and everything. Because I'm actually going to commend my brother as well, because the other reason we weren't sure what was going to happen in terms of catch up with mom and everything on Saturday is, as I've told you before, Coach. Yeah, I don't think I've told Lauren, but my brother is the co-president of the Slingshot Club, and there was a group of folks that wanted him to come and support their nonprofit by bringing the slingshots. This is also Memorial Day weekend, so that a lot of people were going to be available. But my brother realized that even with just a few people that he could give those rides to, and there was like everybody from young kids to older folks that got to ride around in the three-wheelers. And as a matter of fact, one of the younger people was teasing him because he was going like, can you make this thing go any faster? My brother's like going like, that's not what it's designed for. It's designed to like have a fun time. It's not a speed vehicle, and all along those lines and everything. But it was still that he realized it would be a small crowd, smaller than it might be in some other events, but it was something that he could do for this particular, I think it was a nonprofit or this particular community, and all along those lines. So he wasn't going to let it stop him, the fact that a lot of his other drivers were going to be down at Myrtle Beach or some of the other popular places that bikers go to and everything. He wanted to do something for the community, and even with only, I think, 5 of them that came out to the event, it was still a way that he could give some joy to the community. That's the word I was looking for.
There we go.
Sounds like he did it.
He did it, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm just excited, Lauren. I'm excited about where we're headed with this show.
Yeah.
And we're so lighthearted that I think people can receive and see themselves in our shoes. I think that a perfect example of our differences, and when you've got 2 misfits, and we add Mark in here occasionally, you've got multiple misfits in a small space that come together, that bringing their unique gifts and talents creates power.
Yep.
It becomes like a nuclear bomb almost exploding. That 3 people sitting in a small space that are trying to be the same person can't attain. There's no creativity. There's, if anything, negativity, dissension and frustration. And we just operate in a freedom as a misfit that is unparalleled in anything else in life. So
Get there your own way, don't you?
right.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with getting there your own way. And Lauren, I know that sometimes people don't even understand. Some people might call it nerd. Some people might, as I mentioned on one of our past shows, call it arty farty, because there's different names for what people might label as a misfit. But in my mind, I would say that the majority of the world population in one form or another is a misfit, and everything is because there are some forms that they are not fitting in with the typical zone and all along those lines. So I think that we all have a misfit ability in us. I think that it doesn't matter whether you're the most biggest Hollywood producer or whether you're a type that is in your neighborhood PTA. There's probably some element of misfit to us all.
But they're stuck in the matrix still.
Yes.
They're stuck in the matrix still, and they haven't taken the right pill yet to be released, to be free. And that's, I mean, I guess if I'm going to say the ultimate goal of Misfits Managed, yes, is to teach people to be the exception. But once you become the exception, there is a freedom that comes with that, an empowerment that comes with that. It reminds me of what's his name, Mel Gibson in what's that movie where he's laying on the rack and they're actually cutting him open. He's the warrior. Yes. And they're cutting him open and trying to get him to renounce his sins, all this, and he wouldn't. He took the pain, and finally the priest realizes he has something to say, and he tells the people, quiet, the prisoner has something to say. And what he had to say was this blood-curdling screech of freedom. It cost him everything, but at least he died free. So that would be my closing remark. Empty yourself out, as we said earlier, and live a life that when it is your time, when your season is over, that you've exhausted yourself. You've left, as the coach in me would say, you've left everything on the floor. Everything on the floor. And there's nothing left. You withheld absolutely nothing, and you're ready to go.
I think that's a true meaning of servant leadership. And you live your life for God. You live to serve. You live to be who you are, and use what you've got to show others the way.
Right. Ooh, are we trailblazers too?
Is that a question?
No, I'm just kidding. That's part of my name. Gary means that. Tip of the spear.
That's true. That's
barrier
true.
breaker. So
it wasn't even a fair question. You know good and well that you're a trailblazer, just like Lauren knows that she's a trailblazer as well. So I don't even know why you bothered to ask that question, because you are definitely a trailblazer.
I think that's like the perfect way to wrap this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on that note, we're going to get that same 16 seconds or 30 seconds that we got us into here on out of here as well. Actually, I think I'll end with some PSA, so there's no need to end the same way we started. So how about we end with something about mental health? So
This is
I've
your
got a
boy,
PSA
Coach
about
G.
mental health. Go ahead, Coach G.
Oh, I was saying this is your boy, Coach G.
And Lauren.
I was waiting on her. I'm like,
That's what I was waiting for as well. And on that note, we're going to hear this gentleman talking about the importance of mental health as we get ready to get on out of here.
thank you, Mark.
If you're watching this with your friends,
You'll probably make a joke.
Because you know what you feel on the inside.
Isn't what you want people to know.
If you have to pretend to be happy,
find someone you trust and tell them.
If you get mad at things and you don't know why, or have thoughts about hurting yourself,
Find someone you trust and tell them.
You are never alone when you share.
seriously, people care about you.
It's okay to not understand what you're feeling.
And it's easy to think that you're all alone.
But you don't have to be.
You're never alone when you share.
Don't be ashamed to tell someone you trust what you're feeling.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Find someone you trust and tell them.
Tell a parent.
Tell a teacher. Tell a brother or sister.
Or just tell a friend.
You haven't done anything wrong.
Talk to someone.
Talk to someone.
It's how things get better.